Ganna Pogrebna is a data scientist, a global keynote speaker and professor whose work sits at the intersection of human decision-making, artificial intelligence, and emerging technologies. She has helped build behavioral data science as a field, securing millions in competitive research funding, and publishing widely on how data and algorithms shape risk, trust, and behavior in areas ranging from finance and cybersecurity to smart cities and digital innovation. As the host of the excellent YouTube channel, Data Driven, and a frequent advisor to governments and organizations around the world, Ganna is known for translating complex technical ideas into practical, human-centered insights about how AI can better serve people and societies. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Everybody's obsessed with AI right now. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions because I know you've got an incredible depth of insight. So I'm just interested to, learn more about things from your perspective. So
No, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for the invite. It was great to be here.
so perhaps for people that don't necessarily understand, how would you describe what a behavioral data scientist actually does, and what drew you into the space almost between humans and machines, perhaps?
Yeah, I have to probably say that there are quite a few behavioral data scientists now, and probably they all do slightly different things. But I probably will start with myself. So what I do, you could describe it in one sentence, is I'm trying to make machines more human, or make machines understand humans better. So basically, what I do is ensuring that machines use data that's gonna take into account people's preferences, goals, and values. And that these algorithms and machines we use in the real world actually understand us a little bit better, so not suggesting some random things to us and kind of understand where we are coming from, which is very difficult because obviously people don't think in the same way as machines do. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell. But to kind of maybe give you an idea, there are kind of three strands in behavioral data science among behavioral data scientists. So some people come from economic psychology background, which is my background. So I'm an economist. I'm a decision theorist. And if you don't know what decision theorists are, well, in microeconomics, we have game theory, and in game theory, we have decision theory. So decision theorists are people who are basically writing models about how people make decisions. And as you can imagine, it's a very frustrating job because people almost never behave according to mathematical models. And so you kind of constantly, you write a theory, you test it in the lab, it doesn't work, you write a new theory that hopefully works. And kind of it's a constant iterative process. So that's kind of one. In second strand, we have people who come primarily from statistics background, mathematics background. So they are looking at behavior of algorithms, right? Because algorithms also develop and they have behavior. So for example, one of my friends does IQ tests for algorithms, which is very interesting in itself. And yes, so those types of behavioral data scientists, they come from math background. And finally, we also have systems behavior people. So they are primarily coming from engineering backgrounds. So they are looking at complex systems, how people are interacting with machines in complex environments, like cities, for example. Yeah, that's kind of to give you a brief overview of what people might do in behavioral data science.
And it's really interesting you said about how people behave around machines and we behave around technology. So I've just started my PhD, and I'm looking at the ethical implications of emotional connections that we might create between humans and AI systems. I just wonder what your thoughts are on how our relationship with AI is developing and whether it's developing in the way that we expected. Just your thoughts generally.
Yeah, I think that's, definitely there are many problems there, right? So first things kind of, you mentioned ethics, and we normally talk about trust. But the truth is no one knows what trust means in this context, because machines, well, let's just take specific instance. Let's just take large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, people might be using Perplexity, so different types of products, Gemini. So basically, the machine, it never lies to you. It's kind of probabilistic liar and probabilistic truth teller, if you will, because the machine is only as good as the data that you feed to it, because it learns the patterns, right? And then, kind of on the ethical side, we don't know what trust means. Like scientifically, people do not agree, so scientists do not agree on this. So we have lots of debates on what it means. And also, like in terms of, are we developing in the right way? Well, I think it's also a bit early to say, because let's just say, let's take a city, right? And in the city, you normally have regions of the city where you shouldn't go, right? And you know that because you have experience. But with kind of digital spaces or digital cities, we really don't know what we're doing because we don't have a lot of experience. So, I think we definitely have a lot of problems with, for example, agency, right? So we're influenced by algorithms all the time, but we don't realize how we're influenced. So, for example, I have a YouTube channel, right? And I make videos and I kind of put the videos on my channel, but my channel will never be a popular teenager's channel, right? If there's a teenager who's putting makeup and doing this 3 times a day, the YouTube algorithm favors, like one of the things that it favors is frequency, how frequently you're doing this. And so because my content is infrequent of much less frequent, I will never be in the top suggestions of YouTube. But if you're doing this something frequently, you are quite likely to be in the top suggestion to YouTube. And we think when we open YouTube, we think we've chosen to click on the video, but really we didn't, because algorithm has suggested us something. And so these things are really interesting from research perspective, but also very troubling from the human perspective.
And if you think about AI sort of, I guess, beyond ChatGPT or Perplexity or Grok or whatever, you think about, what might you define them? Relationship AI, so replica, character AI, I guess AI that offers you a relationship or a connection with a machine and talks to you in the same way it might talk to a girlfriend or boyfriend or partner or friend or whatever. Does that connection risk damaging our ability to be able to connect in real life?
Well, there is very little research on this, so I probably will offer you kind of my speculative view on the subject. I think that there is definitely the loneliness pandemic that we're facing. So people are much lonelier as a result of, after COVID-19, we spent more time like at home and more time on gadgets. Communication is not the same. So that definitely affects people. How it affects people, we don't really know, right? So we don't really know what are the long-term consequences. We definitely are communicating differently. And as a result of that, last year this was the first year when we saw people using algorithms or large language models as not as just kind of Google type of things, when you query something and you get the response, but really as more as a companion or friend or, so I think it has benefit and risks, right? So on the benefit side, if you are an introvert, which kind of 50% of all population are people who are introverts, that's probably kind of giving you some idea of what people might think about, your opinions or, what you want to do or what you want to say to the world. So there are probably some benefits to it. But on the other hand, I will lose in touch with human, with other humans. That's definitely happening too. I'll give you an example. So I have a friend who has an 11-year-old daughter, and his daughter recently had a birthday party. And he kind of, he's used to birthday parties like, people in the 40s and the 50s. had them when they were kids. So and it's usually very loud, right? And you have balloons and people are talking. And he noticed that there was no sound from his daughter's room, even though there were many people there. And when he walked in, everyone was on the phone talking like through a gadget. And when he said, "Oh, like, are you guys bored or something like that?" Everyone told him, "Oh, that go away, we're having fun," right? So people just basically, I think, they're communicating in different ways with each other and with machines. Yeah, but I don't really know what, and I don't think we have like a scientific view on this, like whether it affects us in really adverse way, or because like my take on it is that will we lose some skills as a result of us communicating with technology? Sure, but will we also gain some skills? Yes, we will, right? So and will those two worlds balance in some way? It might. So yeah, I just think that we just don't have enough evidence to look at this stage to say anything about it.
It's very interesting about it's just very interesting about the teenage party. It's I remember when I was younger, certainly my parents sort of shouting upstairs at me to keep the noise down and turn the music down, whereas now everybody's got their earbuds in and they're just talking. It's like it's very, very quiet. You always want to say, make some more noise, just make do something, stand up and down, dance around, but
go outside, right? So like I don't want to go outside. I just want to play Nintendo, I want to play my PlayStation. Right. So I think it's like it's not really, like it's kind of I think it's general effect on us with all sorts of technology, not just algorithms. That's definitely true. But yeah, like on the other hand, I think we're gaining new skills, like like prompt engineering skills, or in business we're getting product ownership skills. So those are new skills, and is it kind of entirely good or bad? I'm not sure, but for the reasons. Just if you look at human civilization, right, we lived through 3 industrial revolutions, and surely we lost some skills. Like, for example, I don't know, horse riding, right? Like, I bet a lot of people were horse riding, or just, a few decades ago, if you think about it. Now, almost no one rides a horse unless it's a very special, posh hobby. But so we lost that skill, but we we gained a lot of other skills, right? So yeah.
It's funny, my daughter, who's away at university now, which is about to turn 19, we had to go somewhere the other day, and she was saying, "What did you do before you had Google Maps?" So I said, "Well, we had a book. It was called an A to Z. Had all the streets in, and we had maps." And I could never think to do that. And that's a recent example of a skill that we've sort of outsourced to our device. Basically, people don't carry around an A to Z. People don't look at maps before they go somewhere. They just have their phone and follow where the phone tells them to go. So it's good or bad, I don't know, but it's a skill that it's something we've outsourced to something else.
No, I can tell you there is scientific evidence on maps. So, for example, we have a very robust research that it does reduce your brain, kind of your brain function, because you're not remembering maps. And I can tell from personal experience that it's really great in London to get a cab driver who is like older person, because they can like really quickly get you like from one railway station to the other, simply because they know the shortcuts that Google Maps and Google Maps will not tell them, or automatic maps will not tell them. Yeah, so we do know that definitely is correct. So you like the part of the brain that is looking kind of is sort of responsible for memory, and definitely we see the degrading function there. But at the same time, you need to look at other functions, right? That actually is communicating with machines in kind of more sophisticated way. So in a way, well, I kind of tend to think about it in terms of this system 1, system 2 framework by Danny Kahneman. So basically, if you have never heard about it, I'm sure that there will be some people who engage with this podcast who've never heard about it. So basically, the idea is that people think in kind of two systems. System one is the system that we use almost all the time. So this is kind of intuitive, very quick, very seamless kind of thinking. And system two is more sophisticated, more researched. If we need to make really logical decision, we will use system two. So 95% of the time we are using system one, and 5% of the time we're using system two. And basically, if you use AI to challenge yourself and actually engage in more meaningful conversations, you will be developing the system two thinking, right? And you will become smarter. But if you are using AI to only feed into system one, so you definitely will only lose function. And there is actually, I was at a seminar last week where there was a colleague from US who presented on medical decision making. And he showed us one paper on radiologists. Again, just for the context and for the people who are watching us, radiology currently is in crisis because computer vision is very good. And the computer vision almost completely kind of replaced, in a sense, radiologists because computer vision can make pretty good diagnosis, or at least spot the patterns. Obviously, the diagnosis itself is still made by the doctor, because the doctor is responsible for the diagnosis. But this decision support from computer systems is very good. I mean, it just realistically very good. And there was a study that looked longitudinally whether doctors become kind of the same as a result of using the same systems. But it's not the case. It turned out that bad doctors who were making mistakes, they got worse with using computer vision in radiology. And good doctors, they got even better, right? So basically, that tells you that can technology make you more stupid? Probably yes. But it depends how you use it. So if you use it in a good way, you will become smarter. If you use it in a bad way, you will become you probably lose some of your brain functions. Yeah. So
a lot of people, I think, that perhaps don't use large language models and different things. I think they have a thought that you just type in a request and the AI spits out the answer exactly as you want it to be in the right format. But generally, I find you have to go back 6 or 7 times to sort of edit, to challenge, to request, to probe, etc. And it's not quite as perfect as people might think it would be.
Yeah, so if you're using this, this system kind of for precision. That's a lot of people do that. So we kind of expect these systems to be precise. The reason for that is because historically we interacted with Google search. And Google search did not generate anything. It was just looking for information, right?
Really?
And so we all have, and this is not just you or me or like every person on Earth does this. When we engage with the systems, we think that generative systems are just giving us correct answers, or they should give us correct answers, but that's not the case. These are creativity tools, right? So they are very good at kind of giving you some ideas that are outside of the box, right? If you just say, I'm doing this project, give me all possible ideas that you can come up with. It probably will come up with some ideas that you haven't thought of, because it's kind of different from your own thinking. But the majority of people go and they like, okay, I want like a brief for this, right? And they expect correct answer in the form that is really good for them. And these tools are just not designed to do that. But that's great, because when you engage in this process, and if you use the system as kind of this smart contrarian, kind of contradicts you and throwing kind of random stuff at you, you probably develop more than if you just got the right answer right away, right? And just kind of did the copy paste. But this is kind of, as we all know, this to hallucinate, which let's just call this not hallucination but error. They make mistakes. And you always need to check it. But a lot of people just take the output at face value. In my teaching, kind of when I teach, I do this test in many of my subjects. I kind of split the class in half and give for each student an article, basically the reference to an article. And I say, well, for next time, your homework is to produce a summary of the article. And the overwhelming majority of students, like 80%, 85%, they just insert these articles into ChatGPT and they get a summary and they submit that summary. But the problem is that I give 50% of real references and 50% fake references. So the first thing that you should do is actually go to the library, like a virtual library, and actually figure out if the reference exists, right? But many people don't do that. They just assume that everything is accurate. Yeah, and that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I think that maybe surprises people that the different language models. I think almost because they almost like to please, so that they will come out with answers that are, well, first of all, they'll tell you how wonderful you are and how clever you are for asking these questions, and then they'll come out with something. But when you search it, you think, well, that paper doesn't exist. When you and it's a good thing to realize that. It's a good thing to recognize that actually, it's not always going to be.
Yeah, but you know what it is? You know what it is? I think it's just illusion of communication, because the machine, it doesn't understand what it tells you. Like, it has no understanding of meaning. It just reproduces patterns. The thing is, the generative machine, so like ChatGPT or Claude, it's a very stupid system. It does not learn from what you are telling it. Like, it doesn't learn anything. It's not updating because of what you told the machine. It's just trained on really large amounts of data, and all it does, it imitates. But because the imitation, like, we're playing this imitation game with the machine, right? And because the imitation is so good and looks like the real thing, we have this sort of illusion that we're talking to somebody, but it doesn't understand what it is. And you can really see this in computer vision. So if you try to generate a photo of a person, very often you will get like 6 fingers or like, 3 legs or something. And that's because the machine doesn't know what it's doing. It kind of learned that the person roughly should have hands and, fingers and legs, but it doesn't know, like, it doesn't know that we only have 2, hands at the best, or 2 legs at best, right? And so on and so forth. So yeah, I think because we do not, we have this illusion of communication, we don't understand that we're talking to a completely different, like, imitation machine or imitation personality. That simply is trying to throw patterns at us. We often have this kind of illusion of communication, but we're not really communicating. Yeah, all we're doing is we're exchanging patterns.
Do you think we're a long way from an AI that does understand and learn from us?
Okay, so
It's a big question right now.
So like general intelligence and all of this, yeah, I understand. So conscious intelligence. So look, from 2013, so in 2013, I got a job in engineering department, and this is how I got to do all these data science things that normally people in my field do not do. And basically, from 2013, every year, me and my team, we go out and we ask people, when we say AI, what is the first thing that people think? And consistently, people think about Terminators. Like, this is the first thing that And we'll think even now with ChatGPT, like you would have thought that people, like when you say AI, people think ChatGPT. Yes, they do think now ChatGPT and generative AI, but they still think about killing like killer robots or killing machines. Yeah, personally, like you need to understand that machines do not think in the same way we do, so they cannot have conscience like we have, right? And it doesn't matter how much we work. Like we probably can create, like with experience, they probably can create machines that are pretty good in certain functions, but it's not about defining the purpose, right? They might be able to define like steps to go from point A to point B, which we already have those machines. Like if you have a vacuum cleaner that cleans the room and has a machine learning algorithm that commands it, it's probably going in some the special direction to minimize the number of moves. But I'm personally very skeptical about it. I think that it will never happen. Like we will get pretty good machines, don't get me wrong. Probably we'll have machines that will be very, very good in certain like really narrow fields. But I don't think that the machines can have consciousness in the way we imagine, Terminators, things like this.
It's good.
Well, that's my opinion. I have to say that opinion diverge here, but my opinion is it's basically a utopian thought.
So I think some people perhaps sort of keep thinking, gosh, will it be sort of Claude version 7 or will it be ChatGPT version 8 that does this? But I think it feels like a very, very different approach to the ones that large language models take. Like I said, they basically are just taking all the data they can possibly get hold of and use that to create the most likely answer. That's what they're basically predictive models, really, aren't they? They're looking at all the information they have and say, well, what is the most likely answer that this question is going to elicit? Whereas artificial general intelligence, this feels like almost a very, very different thing altogether. Not something that builds on what we already have, but almost comes from a different place, which I'm not sure people are actually, working on fully aware of.
Yeah, that's it. And even if you look at the generative AI products, they become worse, not better, and that's because we have what we call beta inbreeding. So
Yes.
the first instances of GPT or Claude or Perplexity or Gemini, they were built on human data, only human data, right? So whatever like texts went into these machines, like we don't know, like because we never saw what exactly went in, but we know for a fact that it was 100% human data. As we go along, and you can tell, for example, ChatGPT 4.0 is a lot better than 5.2. So 5.2 is faster, definitely, and has other benefits, like it's probably more user-friendly, so user interface is better. But from the quality of the model, you can tell that it was basically it's trained on partially machine data and partially human data. So the problem that we have, I think it's a more kind of important problem than thinking about killer robots, is we are running out of human data. So human data will become really, really valuable. And whoever has real understanding of humans actually will have an advantage, because currently we have all the rubbish inserted by the machines into the internet data, and every next iteration of the of the generative AI algorithms is basically trained on kind of human-machine collaborated data at best, right? If people use them with a tool like you do, like you rewrite multiple times. For some people, and you can see this on LinkedIn, right? They just threw a question into an LLM and then they write, "I'm very pleased to inform you," or what, and with lots of cliches, so they could be pasted from an LLM model. But that's the reality that we have. So human data will be like gold. It's extremely, extremely valuable.
Yeah, it's becoming harder and harder, isn't it, to know what is purely human. And there's more and more big businesses, more and more organizations, more and more governments are using AI and having AI embedded in their processes and their understandings, that people then use it to create things, which then becomes theirs, but then it's partially created by data of other data, which, yeah.
That's right, and it also creates another problem that everyone looks just like everyone else, right? So I often come to class and we do this experiment. I say, well, take a large language model and ask it to guess a number between 0 and 10. And then I say, how many people got 7? And like 90% of the class would get a 7. So the problem is that, because we are constantly collaborating with machines on these, like written tasks, so that anything we need to write, like basically it's very difficult to tell the difference. For example, I'm sure you noticed this on LinkedIn. Sometimes you look at different profiles of people who do the same thing, like for example, UX design, right? You look at the profiles and every profile looks exactly the same, like it's written by exactly the same person. Yeah, and so I think the skills that will be really valuable is this kind of how do we still have unique voice even though we are collaborating with machines, right? And how do we preserve the human data and hold on to it?
100%. And one of the areas that you've done a lot of work in, and let me go back a second. So a lot of my background is in commercial real estate and cities and buildings. I know you did a lot of work around smart cities. And I wondered what your thoughts on how AI can help us evolve cities that are smarter and that work for us.
Yeah, look, I mean, there is a lot of potential, but I think everything that is physical, that we are not very good innovating in physical things, right? Like virtual things, the innovation has been like great.
Yeah.
I think, like even if we like just abstract from cities for 1 second, like we have all these fantastic algorithms and computing has gone really far in terms of innovation, but it still takes I don't know 14 hours to fly from Sydney to Dubai. Like we didn't move much. So we did have some good ideas like Concord and everything like that. But so in the cities we have the same problem. So we have the problem is currently that I mean it's actually a very similar problem to the technology that we discussed today. Is that we have cities that do not maximize people's potential. So in fact, everything is against you in a sense. So there are very few cities that are made for people and with people in mind, right? And so, there are a lot of things that, like really interesting things that you can do, but they unfortunately all exist in like with a single instance or as an experiment. Like one of the things, for example, that I've done a few years back was approaches around human well-being and cities. And one of the things that we found out through research, and we have lots of many thousands of people in the study, is that one of the things that make you incredibly stressed and less happy is the lack of time. So if you think about it, when you were younger, you probably thought the time was longer. So we the experiments that we do is we take young person and put them in a cubicle with nothing to do for 3 minutes. And we do the same with an adult. An adult would come out and say, yeah, it was 2 minutes, or what to see. And the younger person would come out and say, oh, it was forever, it was 10 minutes. So basically, we think the time is longer. And if you think about the happiness in life, it's U-shaped, right? So we hit the bottom of happiness, we're really unhappy around 50, and then it kind of starts improving. And basically, what we found is it has correlation with our time perceptions. Because when we're younger, we think time is longer. then it becomes really short, and then it kind of improves a little bit towards later life. And yeah, we wanted kind of to use that idea to increase happiness in cities, right? So one of the things that you can do is basically, in a sense, you can create areas in the middle of city center when you like artificially stop the clock, right? So so the running from one place to the other, or you're working like you're really busy, and then you see, I don't know, a waterfall, or you see, you know, something that makes you think, okay, the time is longer than it is. You can create this with physical media like I said, like a waterfall, but you can also create something with digital, right? So you can create a piece of digital art that will make people stop and like watch it for a few minutes, and they will feel that it's a little bit longer. But yeah, I think the problem that we have and that is just really complicated. And each project is very unique to a particular city. And yeah, it's I think it's like one of these areas that is really underexplored, and I wish we had better ways of doing it. But I'm an optimist. I think it becomes cheaper to kind of run tests and do ideas, like say ideas, because now we have like coding became really accessible. You no longer need to know how to code, right? You can go to Google AI Studio and just type, make me an app that does this, and it will create you an app in a few seconds. So I'm a great believer that with kind of more accessibility to these technologies, we need, we will develop kind of better tools for cities. But at the same time, there has to be great behavioral design, because a lot of times cities build stuff that no one needs and no one will ever engage with, right? So that purpose is kind of very, very important before you do anything. Like you need to understand who is it for, who will benefit, like what are we trying to achieve? And these are the questions. I know that like sounds like common sense, right? But these are the questions that are very rarely asked.
It's fascinating, that whole perception of time, and a couple of examples that I've heard. One of which is, I'm sure everybody's heard the story, but in a very tall building, people were complaining how long the elevators took, how long the lifts took to arrive. So they got engineers together and thought, what do we need to do to improve it? And it's like, we can do this, do that. We can replace the lifts, and they'll save 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever. And then they had a behavioralist came in and they said, well, what we should do is put mirrors in front of the elevators. So whilst nothing changed in terms of time, people had something to look at. You could look at themselves. So actually the time waiting for the elevator felt much less than it did before. So rather than try and shave off 10 seconds by spending millions fixing the elevators, actually putting mirrors up there as something to restrict more.
This is a great example of behavioral design. Yeah. So when
then the other example I had was almost one of the reasons why Uber's been so successful is that before Uber, you would normally telephone a local taxi company and he was say, yeah, I'll be there in 15 minutes. 15 minutes comes past, and it's 18 minutes, 20 minutes, you ring back, yeah, he's on his way, he's around the corner. I think what Uber did successfully is on the app, you can literally watch the car coming to you. So you have certainty of the time. You're no longer worried about, is it going to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? It almost doesn't matter how long it is, because you've got certainty about how long it's going to be, and you're not concerned anymore. So I think that's one of the big reasons why they were successful, is that they can give certainty as to how, well, apart from when they turn around and say your car's been cancelled. But apart from that, you had certainty about time, because people do want to know when things are going to happen, how long things are going to take. And anything that tells you that is a big win, I think.
I think it's like a really genius thought around like a lot of, so I do a lot of AI projects, but the first thing I do before anything, I like when it's a consultancy project, I ask the company, do you really need AI, or can we achieve the same goal with a simple behavioral intervention? And very often you can have a really cheap project, and achieve the same goal with just behavioral means. like an example I can give you. So we had, so it was like very similar to the Miro project. We had an engineering company that approached my team, and they said, "Oh, like we really want you to create this AI system for our engineers." So the idea is that they have a piece of software, and the engineers look at some data, and then they make a decision.
Mhm.
And the problem was that the engineers felt that the screens changed very slowly. So they would have to wait for the screens to load. And so the company wanted us to have to create a predictive system where the engineers would basically, like, the system would anticipate what next screen the engineer is likely to do. So it will kind of preload in the background and it will be displayed to the engineer. But then, we ask questions like, "Oh, and how do we know the decisions that they will make from this new system would be better?" That's one question. Then second, um, do we really need the sophisticated AI? Look, we can totally do this tool for you, but uh, maybe it's not about how fast the system is, but really just the perception.
Yeah.
And we would tell that the screens were changing actually very, very fast. It's just the change was not very salient because the screen was mostly black and very hard to see when stuff changes on it. So all we did is we just changed the colors of different things on the screen. So the project costed, I don't know, $15,000 instead of $1 million. And the engineers felt that everything was changing very quickly, right? And so, yeah, and I think a lot of times companies they don't realize that, they can, do things very simply with the behavioral design rather than with AI, because they just want AI. Really, we just want AI, period. And it's okay to say that, but then you need to acknowledge that you just want AI. You don't want to solve any problem.
100%. And one of my favorite sayings is by an architect, and we can change it a little bit. But the saying is, technology is the answer. Now, what's the question? And I think we've got to a place now where we're saying AI is the answer. What's the question? It's because a lot of CEOs and a lot of leaders are a bit sorry, we've got to bring in AI. That's not bringing in AI isn't the answer to any question. It's if we want to improve sales, increase profitability, reduce headcount. All of these things are things to do. Now let's work out the best way to do it, as opposed to, well, let's bring in AI, as if that's somehow going to create your strategy, tactics, deliverables for you. It just doesn't. It just frustrates me a lot that people have this thing about AI. AI is the answer. This is the answer to what question, though?
Yes, exactly.
And I don't think we spent enough time thinking about that, really. So a lot of the work that you do perhaps looks at risk and decision making. And do you think that the way we're currently engaging with AI and using AI is helping to mitigate and limit risks and helping us make better decisions, or is that a wrong question?
Again, it depends on the context, right? I think in some contexts, AI is really helpful. Yeah, so for example, again, if we take health, I mean, there are many problems, right? Even in health, or care questions where we don't have enough people who can care, for example, for elderly. So there are definitely some really promising areas, and they are relatively. So the problem for the algorithm is the context needs to be very well defined, right? So if the context is really well defined in some simple functions, I think it's really it's not the risk is really low. And I'm not done in health at this stage, but I mean some areas like we have really simple automation. I don't know, you have a lawnmower that just goes and cuts grass, and it's powered by a machine learning algorithm that just knows I need to cut the grass in this area. So what is the best way for me, more efficient way for me to do it, so that I save battery. So this is kind of low risk environment where we definitely can have, very good machines. Also, I think this whole question about kind of high risk and also about the conscious machines takes us away from problems that are really important, like world hunger or climate change. So all of these things are areas where AI can really help. It can be really a useful tool to understand what is going on, like understand some patterns, give us some valuable information, and then act as a very good decision support systems or system to actually inform people who can make decisions. But I think very often we just have these two camps of people. One camp is constantly, oh, like AI is coming to kill us, and the second crowd that is really optimistic about it. And I must say, I'm with Dalai Lama in the middle, saying that there are good things, there are bad things. Even risky, I think, of course, it's risky. So even if we use technology in the wrong way, it will totally backfire, right? But again, I'm a great believer that people understand that they need to have human involvement at all stages of the technological development of systems where it really impacts on somebody's life, or it's it's an environment that's really difficult to predict, where we will have safeguards on some systems in place. But we just have to accept that this is never going to be completely safe. Like, it is risky. And the way in which, so technology always develops much faster than the regulation around it, right? And this is just a risk that we have to accept. There's not much we can do about it. But we do need to have good systems to better understand or anticipate what these risks are. So, for example, let's just take Facebook or Meta, right? No one could ever imagine when Meta was created originally that this would become like a threat to democracy, that they will, people will try to influence somebody's vote using Meta, right? But we do know that this happened. So the companies that did this, and could have then been anyone who anticipated these risks back in the day. Probably, if you gave it to a philosopher, they could have said, yeah, like I envisaged that in a few years' time, there could be a problem. But, we never had these people like looking at this problem. So that's why I think when we develop new technologies, the best way to get away from a risky situation is to show it to diverse group of people with different backgrounds, so they can tell you. Like, I myself as a developer very often ask philosophers or lawyers to look at the tool and they say, okay, I have this app prototype. Do you think there are any risks? Can it harm anybody? That's the question that I normally ask them. And my colleagues normally come up with pretty good answers. So I think the key point is like whether that it's risky and whether the technology can harm us is really around. Do not develop technology yourself on your own. Like ask your neighbor who is not a technology person, who is maybe like someone with soft skills or from humanities, and they will tell you, because they read a lot of cool science fiction books and probably can tell you what might happen. And they know the research in human understanding and recognition and things like that. And second thing is the number one question that anyone should ask before developing anything is, can it harm anybody? In principle, like in the future. So yeah, and when you develop it, I'm not saying do not develop if there are risks. But develop understanding that there are risks.
And I think we're going through a live example of that at the moment with Anthropic in the US has been given something this whole Friday by the government to allow its system and its tool to be able to use within American military and to almost make decisions is one of the things that Anthropy is very against. But then the US government said, well, they might, if they say no, they might compel it. So you do have concerns about that. And that was going to lead me on to a question. You've obviously worked all over the world. You've talked to and advised lots of governments. How do you feel about the way governments are currently understanding and creating a future for AI?
It's very heterogeneous view, right? So we have some governments that have AI ministers, like Albania has.
Yeah, for procurement.
Yeah, we have like 100% AI. Generated minister at the moment. So I just think, like, so I'm not an expert on US system at all, so don't really know what's going on there. But I feel that in many, like in public policy situations, we have a lot of checks and balances. A lot of things are done manually. A lot of things are done by like a committee of people, or many people are decision makers. It's very rare that you have like a single person who's making the decision, even in, like really high stakes environments like nuclear, right? So you don't have like one person pushing the button. It will be a number of people making decisions, and so there are kind of a lot of these decision redundancies in the system that kind of prevents us from a big, huge, from making huge mistakes because multiple people are looking at them. I think that so I haven't heard about like the military example that you gave, but like from what I know about people who do command and control, and some people who actually are decision makers, right? They are very aware of everything. And I cannot imagine, even if there is a directive that you need to listen to advice, I think they will be checking. Definitely. But the general trend, I think, is that there will be some degree of automation in governmental, in public service. And there are probably areas where we can really benefit from more automation, because there are huge waiting times on certain things, and that could be avoided if we had more automation. I think it's just a matter of, again, listening to people from different backgrounds before you implement those systems. And people have very strong opinions on technology, even when they're not technical. And I think the governments that really take into account these views will be different. Well, countries, nation states will be much better off. And at the moment, I don't think there are right or wrong ways. Like, for example, if we look at legislation, right, European legislation is very top down and anticipating risk, whereas the American way has always been, more sectoral regulation, more responsive to a particular type of incidents or and things like that. So more kind of bottom-up approach. It's hard to tell what exactly is the right way. I think we're definitely going to be one step behind all the time with regulation. But my opinion is that if there is a diversity of opinions that I listen to, there are some good consultations with civil society and the public before the systems are implemented by the government. That's probably as good as you can, as good as it can get, because you are likely to get opinions and warnings ahead of time that you can think about before you implement things.
And does it concern you that the majority of the big six global AI companies are led and directed by, I don't know, middle-aged white men? Does it concern you that it doesn't appear to be as diverse?
There are many women. There are many. We just don't see them. No. I know what you're saying. Like, it's not that. I think that there is definitely a problem with diversity, but there is always this invisible women. So yeah, we have the face, we have normally a white male, but then like immediately right after them, the second person in the hierarchy is normally a woman.
And doing her work.
So, yeah, I'm completely. So what I'm concerned with more that. So I think that on like women representation, there's definitely a problem. And like not enough maybe people from uh, you know also kind of socially affected groups, and
Yes.
it's not only female problem. There's a lot of maybe underrepresented groups. My problem is also the intersectional problems. Like for example, if we look at Fortune 500 companies, right, only 4% are women CEOs, but then if I want to find, let's just say, black female CEO, I would have real trouble. Like I don't know about this year. I remember 2 years ago there was one. There was a situation that there were none. So yeah, there's definitely an issue with inclusion in these environments. But I just want to say that it's I think that women are present different at the top level. And I don't know whether that's, by construction. So we know that in some companies it is like Amazon got in trouble by, discriminating against women because they used an AI algorithm for CV scans, I think in software engineering department. And because everyone in the department was male, they like women didn't have any chance to be higher. But like I just definitely like lack of inclusion and diversity is a big problem. But it doesn't mean that women are not doing the work. So they're definitely doing the work in these companies. Yes.
Yeah. And I think one of the other challenges that we often think about diversity and inclusion as being male, female, and different ethnicities, which I think is absolutely correct. But there is perhaps the diversity of thought or background that we don't necessarily come across. Just because a company has 50% male, 50% female on the board, if you look at who those board members are, very typically they've all been to an Ivy League college. They worked at McKinsey. They worked at Deloitte. They actually have the same thought process. So I don't think we have enough about people with a diverse background that have perhaps gone to a different school or haven't gone to college or haven't worked at McKinsey or Deloitte, though. Yeah, come from somewhere different. And I think that's something we really don't see anything of in company reports and things.
Right. I mean, look, this is again not just technology boards. All over the place. I think that there are two considerations here. On the one hand, I understand why that happens, because as just as I myself, I am a non-exec director, right? And as a chair of the board, you want to have a functional board. So you are, I think, you want to make sure that you reach a decision, right? And I think people are wrongly thinking that if they have diversity of opinions, it will be more difficult to reach a decision. That's obviously not the case, but I do understand why they tend to hire kind of the same type of person to the board, right? And this is, I just think that it's also kind of the problem is with human nature, but I do think that there is definitely a positive trend. Obviously, partly through kind of introduced through these quotas that we have, and we do have people who are thinking differently. But I also think that this is the job that the the CEO and basically advisors when you are trying to be the founders. They need to make that commitment to have diversity of opinion, because normally they just think, oh, like who would be the best for attracting investment? Like if we have this person on board, we get more venture capital, whatnot. So they kind of put this thought at the back of their mind, right? You're not thinking about I want to have the most diverse board. You're thinking I want to have functional board that gets me the most investment. in the company. But I do think that, well, from what I see, like from the founders right now, a lot of them are thinking about inclusion of the. So I think that in the next maybe 10 years, we will see big shifts because people really are like making a commitment in order to have a diverse board. Say like, yeah, we founded this company and we do want to have a diverse, and this is great to see. Like I haven't seen it for many, many years, and that's a positive trend. So hopefully it will change.
Mm. I've got two teenage children. So Alexander's 16 and is still at school. Madeline's 18, is now at university studying philosophy and ethics. And what would you advise? Some free advice here. What would you advise sort of the 13, 14, 15, and 16-year-olds and their parents? Should they be spending all the time studying AI? Should they be spending their time studying human behavior and relationships? Because I think you've got a good balance of you're really focused on human-centered development and excellence, which I think is really important. I think a lot of people just sort of seem to spend the time, no, you spend all the time focusing on AI. I wondered how you would position it.
Okay, look, I personally, I have a 9-year-old son. So my first of all, like, let me think a story about philosophy. I know that philosophy enrollments skyrocketed this year. A lot of people go and study philosophy because they really want to connect with the human component. Yeah. So definitely there is this sort of almost march into these types of majors, which I think is a great thing because people are more thinking kind of how do I differ, right? How do I differ when everyone is the same? So in that sense, I think philosophy is a great thing. So what I try to teach my son, so for me, it's the most important thing is that he has transferable skills. So basically that he doesn't like lock himself in a really narrow field where he cannot like learn something else or do something else. I think people with this flexibility of mind and flexibility that they can learn, that they can go and do something else, will definitely prosper in the next 50 to 60 years. Second thing is ability to come up with interesting problems and desire to solve the problems. Okay, so it's more kind of, I think it's probably the mindset of this is a more engineering mindset, right? So if you are working with real world, with real people, trying to solve problems that exist, you will always have a job. Should you study AI? I think you should be definitely AI literate because people are not going to be replaced by AI. They will be replaced by other people who know how to use automation to their benefit, right? So basically, even if you are a philosopher, I think you should know enough about AI to kind of be able to use it, right? But again, it needs to be grounded in the real world problem. So, for example, my son spends a lot of time making robots, right? Because he kind of comes up with interesting problems that he had at school, that people have in his school, and he's trying to kind of create something that would solve that problem. But along the way, when you have a research project, a lot of things will go wrong. You would have to pivot, you would have to change your plan, you would have to probably learn something that you didn't anticipate at the outset. So basically, like if you are not studying anything, or if you think what to study, first find an interesting problem that you're really passionate about for your community, for yourself, for your family. Doesn't matter. And just to think, what skill do I need to solve this problem? And then you know what you need to study because it will be obvious from your goal, but it has to be grounded in you basically need to think, how can I make this world better, and be really excited about that. Because if you're bored studying, it will be obvious to everybody, to you in the first place. Yeah. For example, my dream, my dream is to, like in Iron Man has Jarvis, right? This is just a very intelligent system. And this is a tailored algorithm that is tailored to you and does what you want, helps you, and it kind of helps you to be a better person, the best version of yourself. So my dream is that every person on earth has a Jarvis, right? So that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I do. Find yourself a dream, I'm building the Jarvis, maybe you building the bridge, and you're thinking how to build the best bridge in the world, the most stable, the most safe bridge, things like that. So you are trying to solve a real problem. And with that, you will learn a lot of things, because building the bridge is not easy. And you probably would have to change your plan multiple times and learn different things.
It is important to be passionate, isn't it? To find something
Yeah.
and then do that. So my final question, I'm not sure it's hard or easy really. It is do you know what the next 5 years looks like for you? What are your plans for the next the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm now also excited about new ways of, so like I said, I believe that the data will shrink, or valuable data will shrink.
Yeah.
And so I think the most important problem would be, how do we create good systems for people with this constantly shrinking data? And so what I'm currently really excited about, like scientifically, is bringing in kind of physics models into behavioral science.
Okay.
So we call it quantum decision making, but what really, it doesn't mean quantum computing. It just means different ways of modeling with very few data points, but at the same time making realistic inferences about what people might do. And I'm really excited to work in the real world. So, when you see people's lives changing because of this little thing that you have created, it's really a rewarding experience. So for me, it's very, very exciting. So I think I will do more of that. There's some crazy theory as well. So I think for me, science should always progress. So we often talk, I'm sure you probably talked multiple times in this podcast about the crisis in behavioral science. So there is a crisis. Everyone says, oh, there's an application crisis, there are problems that we have.
Yeah.
But I think it's because if you're just stuck within the same narrow field and you're trying to just improve on the theories that we wrote, maybe in 1940s, 1970s, you will be stuck in this and it will be difficult to improve. But if you see how other sciences, other disciplines can enrich behavioral science, like I never felt any crisis. I was very busy developing behavioral data science and the methods and things like that in the community. Now I think it will be more into quantum, maybe next 10 years for me. I think that definitely it's very exciting, and the science can always go forward, and it should always go forward with practice in mind. So how is it useful to people on the ground?
Thank you so much for that and everything else. I think you've just clearly demonstrated the power and value of passion and progress. I think that's something we perhaps don't spend enough time thinking about. How are we going to make progress and what am I passionate about? So, you've helped explain that very clearly. So, just thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. It was great to be here.